Hey sweet friends, it's Megan. Welcome back here to the Wolterman Homestead. It is Saturday, which for our family means that it is Shabbat, which is the day that we rest and spend time with God and let Him be our focus. Now, Dylan is usually with me on these readings, but his schedule has just been really crazy, and so he is resting. So you just got me today, which I don't think that's a bad thing to do. So the readings today, I will leave them linked down below in the description so you can go check them out. Is Exodus chapter 1 verse 1 through chapter 6 verse 1. And then you have this really big portion of the prophets in Isaiah. It starts in chapter 27 verse 6 through chapter 28 verse 13. And then goes into chapter 29 verse 22 and 23. And then you have the gospel section of Matthew chapter 2, verse 1 and 2. So looking at that and flipping through, trying to decide what I want to read and talk to you about. Exodus. I love Exodus. Oh, and there's just so many good, amazing little bits here. And like the first couple of chapters. I mean, the whole thing is really good. But just Exodus, it's so beautiful. So grab your Bible and come read with me. So I'm reading from the Complete Jewish Bible for Christians and Jews. I just really love this translation, but I recommend getting a translation that you enjoy and that you can understand, because that's what's important. You understanding what you're reading. So as I read, the names and things are a little different because it is a Jewish themed Bible, and so the names have been replaced. So let's start in chapter 1 and just kind of see where we end up. These are the names of the sons of Israel who came into Egypt with Yaakov. Each man came with his household. You have Reuven, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Yishakar, Zebulun, Benjamin, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. All told, there are 70 descendants of Yaakov. Joseph was already in Egypt. Joseph died, as did all his brothers and all that generation. The descendants of Israel were fruitful, increased abundantly, multiplied, and grew very powerful. The land became filled with them. Now there arose a new king over Egypt. He knew nothing about Yaakov, but said to his people, "Look, the descendants of Israel have become a people too numerous and powerful for us. Let's use wisdom in dealing with them. Otherwise, they'll continue to multiply. And in the event of war, they might rally themselves with our enemies, fight against us, and leave the land altogether." So they put slave masters over them to oppress them with forced labor, and they built for Pharaoh the storage cities of Pithom and Ramesses. But the more the Egyptians oppressed them, the more they multiplied and expanded, until the Egyptians came to dread the people of Israel and work them relentlessly, making their lives bitter with hard labor, digging clay, making bricks, all kinds of field work. And in all this toil, they were shown no mercy. Moreover, the new king of Egypt spoke to the Hebrew midwives, one whom was called Shiphrah and the other Puah. When they attended to the Hebrew women, and seeing them give birth, he said, "If it's a boy, kill him, and if it's a girl, let her live." However, the midwives were God-fearing women, so they didn't do as the king of Egypt ordered, but they let the boys live. The king of Egypt summoned the midwives and demanded of them, "Why have you done this and let the boys live?" And the midwives answered Pharaoh, It is because the Hebrew women are not like the Egyptian women. They go into labor and give birth before the midwife arrives. Therefore, God prospered the midwives, and the people continued to multiply and grow very powerful. Indeed, because the midwives feared God, he made them founders of families. When Pharaoh gave this order to all his people, every boy that is born, throw into the river, but let the girls live. So that's chapter 1. The beauty in this story is that it just talks about a pharaoh. You would think that the pharaoh's name would be mentioned here in chapter 1, but it's not. It just says Pharaoh. But who is mentioned? Those 2 Hebrew midwives. And their names are really beautiful if you go look them up in the Hebrew. And they just mean things. Let's look it up real quick. The first Hebrew midwife, Shiphrah, her name means fair.
Strong's H8236. Shiphrah.
Shiphrah. I'm saying it wrong. But that her name means fair. The other woman's name?
Strong's H6326. Puah.
And her name means splendid. I just think it's really cool to study names. So fair and splendid are their names, and that they are remembered, and that God made them founders of families. Like, after having a home birth and having a midwife, it's just really cool. So let's read chapter 2. Now, as I'm going to read into chapter 2, I just want to remind you of that phrase that I often refer to, and I wrote a whole blog about, of put it in a basket. I actually just finished a podcast interview today, and I talked about this idea of putting things in the basket. So, Exodus chapter 2. A man from the family of Levi took a woman also descended from Levi as his wife. When she conceived and had a son, upon seeing that a fine child he was, she hid him for 3 months. When she could no longer hide him, she took up a papyrus basket, coated it with clay and tar, and put the child in it, and placed it among the reeds of the river bank. His sister stood at a distance to see what would happen to him. The daughter of Pharaoh came down to bathe in the river, while her maids and attendants walked along the riverside. Spotting the basket in the reeds, she sent the slave girl to go get it. When she opened it, she looked inside, and there in front of her was a crying baby boy. Moved with pity, she said, "This must be one of the Hebrews' children." At this point, his sister said to Pharaoh's daughter, "Would you like me to go and find one of the Hebrew women to nurse the baby for you?" Pharaoh's daughter answered and said, "Yes, go." So she sent the girl and called for his own mother. Pharaoh's daughter told her, "Take this child away and nurse it for me, and I will pay you for doing it." So the woman took the child and nursed it. Then, when the child had grown some, she brought it to Pharaoh's daughter, and she began to raise him as her own son. She called him Moshe, which is Moses, which means to pull out, explaining, "I pulled him out of the water." One day, when Moshe was a grown man, he went out to visit his kinsmen. He watched them struggle at forced labor. He saw an Egyptian strike a Hebrew, one of his kinsmen. He looked away, and when he saw that no one was around, he killed the Egyptian and hid his body in the sand. The next day he went out and saw 2 Hebrew men fighting with each other. To the one in the wrong, he said, "Why are you hitting your companion?" He retorted, "Who appointed you ruler over us? Do you intend to kill us the way you had killed that Egyptian?" Moshe became frightened. Clearly, he thought, the matter had become known. When Pharaoh heard of it, he tried to have Moshe put to death. But Moshe fled from Pharaoh to live in the land of Midian. One day, while he was sitting by a well, the 7 daughters of the priest of Midian came to draw water. They had to fill the troughs to water their father's sheep. When the shepherds came and tried to drive them away, but Moshe got up and defended them, then he watered their sheep. When they came to Reuel, their father, he said, "How come you're back so soon today?" They answered, "An Egyptian rescued us from the shepherds. More than that, he drew water for us and watered the sheep." He asked his daughters, "Where is he?" "Why did you leave the man there? Invite him to come have something to eat." Moshe was glad to stay on with this man, and he gave Moshe a daughter, Zipporah, in marriage, and she gave birth to a son, and he named him Gershom, which means foreigner there. For he said, "I have been a foreigner in this land." One of the other Bibles that I had, it had the word sojourner in it. And I just thought that word is beautiful because it just means foreigner. And a lot of translations read alien, but I just thought it was really cool. As I'm reading, I see a little note. Sometime during those years, the king of Egypt died, but the people of Israel still groaned under the yoke of slavery. They cried out, and their cry for rescue from slavery came up to God. God heard their groaning, and he remembered his covenant with Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. God saw the people of Israel, and God acknowledged them. I think that's beautiful. God heard, he remembered, he saw, and he acknowledged them. And it goes back to the covenant that God made with Abraham of, I think it's Genesis 15, where God makes a covenant with Abraham, and they do a offering. I'm going to leave a tab up here to another video that's just really cool at breaking it down and the meaning behind it and adding Jesus or Yeshua into it. But it is the promise that ends up getting fulfilled a little bit later here in Exodus. So I'm going to read chapter 3 and then I'll call it a day because I could just go on and on with you. But in reading chapter 3, in this translation of the Bible for the first time, I sat and cried. I just cried and cried and cried because this translation is so beautiful. And I just felt God's presence when I read it. And I just really like this translation. And it's just beautiful how the word of God is alive and how many times we can read it and just find little nuggets and find things that just stand out. So chapter 3. Now Moshe was attending the sheep of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian. Leading the flock to the far side of the desert, he came to the mountain of God, to Horeb. The angel of Adonai appeared to him in a blazing fire in the middle of a bush. He looked and saw that though the bush was aflame with fire, yet the bush was not being burned up. Moshe said, "I am going over to see this amazing sight and find out why the bush isn't burning up." When Adonai saw that he had gone over to see, God called to him from the middle of the bush, "Moshe, Moshe." He answered him, "Here I am." And God said, "Don't come any closer. Take your sandals off your feet, because the place where you are standing is holy ground. I am the God of your father." He continued, "The God of Abraham, the God of Yitzhak, and the God of Yaakov." Moshe covered his face because he was afraid to look at God. And Adonai said, "I have seen how my people are being oppressed in Egypt, and I have heard their cry for release from their slave masters, because I know their pain. I have come down to rescue them from the Egyptians and to bring them out of that country to a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey, the place of the Canaanite, Hittite, Morai, Perez, Hittite, and Yusavite. Yes, the cry of the people of Israel has come to me, and I have seen how terribly the Egyptians oppress them. Therefore now come, and I will send you to Pharaoh, so that you can lead my people, the descendants of Israel, out of Egypt." And Moses said to God, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and lead the people out of Egypt?" He replied, I will surely be with you. Your sign that I have sent you will be that when you lead the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this mountain. Moshe said to God, look, when I appear before the people of Israel and say to them, the God of your ancestors has sent me to you, they'll ask me, what is his name? What am I to tell them? And God said to Moshe, Chaya, Asher, Chaya, I am, will be what I am, will be, and added, here is what you say to the people of Israel, Chaya, I am or I will be, has sent me to you. God said further to Moshe, say this to the people of Israel, Yud-He Vav-He, Adonai, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Yitzhak, and the God of Yaakov has sent me to you. This is my name forever. This is how I am to be remembered, generation after generation. Go gather the leaders of Israel together and say to them, Adonai, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, of Yitzhak, and Yaakov, has appeared to me and said, I have been paying close attention to you and have seen what is being done to you in Egypt. And I have said that I will lead you up out of the misery of Egypt and to the land of Canaan. Hittite, Amorite, Peri, Hivi, and Yusharai, to the land flowing with milk and honey. They will heed what you say. Then you will come, you and the leaders of Israel, before the king of Egypt, and you will tell him, Adonai, the God of the Hebrews, has met with us. Now, please let us go 3 days to journey into the desert so that we can sacrifice to Adonai our God. I know that the king of Egypt will not let you leave unless he is forced to do so. But I will reach out my hand and strike Egypt with all my wonders that I will do there. After that, he will let you go. Moreover, I will make the Egyptians so well disposed towards this people that when you go, you won't go empty-handed. Rather, all of the women will ask their neighbors and their house guests for silver, gold, and jewelry and clothing with which you will dress your own sons and daughters. In this way, you will plunder the Egyptians. That last bit goes back to God's covenant with Abraham in Genesis 15. It is just beautiful. I'm going to take a screenshot and share how this Bible translates the name of God. And it's just beautiful. He is good, and his name has been the same from the beginning of time. And he has many names and many translations, but he is the same yesterday, today, and forever. I would love to hear what maybe little nuggets stood out to you in today's reading, or simply share what you are reading down in the comment section below. I just pray blessings over you, that you feel his presence, and that scales are removed from your eyes each and every day. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May his face shine upon you, and may he give you his shalom. Shabbat shalom, sweet friends.